All right. Good Monday morning. Almost. Oh, it's afternoon for you now, Jen.
Afternoon. Imagine that. Good Monday
Right?
afternoon.
Yeah. I'm really excited for today because I feel like I get to be a little bit of a kindergartner. um, and I'm so excited. One, for the second book to be coming out. Two, I have had the absolute pleasure of being able to have some sneak peeks myself. Um, and have been reading it in your voice, but have not actually got to hear it in your voice. So I'm very excited to now have that piece of it. But before we jump in, I just, with I want you to kind of just share real quickly, like where has this come from?
Mm.
Why book number two? And what was sort of the call to want to make sure you had this new book now out into the world?
Big question. Thanks for that. Ta-da! Um, because I called this book. I'm so bad at this
You
game.
got it. Yeah.
Book number one. I said that's my first book, so that would imply that there would be more. I also published that 10 years ago.
Wow.
10 years ago. I can't believe that. I still like it still sells here and there. It's funny. It makes me laugh. Um I that was kind of like my baby. That was the and I think I've shared this story a few times, but if you hadn't heard it, I wanted to write a book since I was 7 years old, literally. Like I wrote my first poem when I was 7. And that was something that really stuck with me. And my first poem when I was 7 was because I would watch my brother used to write poetry when he was younger. Um, and I remember I gave my dad a poem for Father's Day. This was my gift to him on, do you remember that like manila paper that was weird and scratchy?
Hmm. Totally.
And you write with pencil and it just kind of like looked weird. So I remember writing with pencil on this folded up manila piece of paper. I still have it, as a matter of fact. I gave it to my dad for Father's Day, and it was called "The Ending of a Dream."
Mm. Mm.
Um, I'm gonna try to remember it right now. I know this is weird, but I'm just gonna try.
No.
Um, when I was young, I had a dream of what I thought I'd do. I'd climb a rope to the tippy top and make those dreams come true. But the sky must be the limit, and even that might be a little too confining for all I'd hoped I'd see. Well, I guess you wonder if I'm not a little sad. Well, it's not so bad for dreams to end because I've learned something new. The ending of a dream is when that dream comes true. So through the years, I tell myself whenever things go wrong that there is still tomorrow, and I tell myself, dream on.
Oh my God.
I don't know how I just remembered that, honestly. I hadn't recited that in a very long time. I'm not sure which is more concerning to me, the fact that the 7-year-old in me used the word confining,
Yeah, that's impressive.
or that I said the words when I was young.
Right.
Um, right? Like, I'm not sure. Anyway, so that was my very first poem I wrote when I was 7,
Mhm.
and I have been writing ever since.
Yeah.
And I've told the story about going to college as a psych major, and my freshman English professor said to me, pulled me aside before Thanksgiving break, and said, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You're a writer. You have a God given talent, and you need to use it." And that's the day that I changed my major. So, sometimes it just takes someone to kind of pull you aside like that.
Mhm.
And it's something that I, I used all of my life to just kind of let go of stuff. You know how that goes, right? It's like
Mhm.
journals and all kinds of things. And I would write poetry through, peaks and valleys of my life. There are times where I write a lot more than others.
Mhm.
And I think that's the hard part. I went to school, then I actually became an English major with a concentration in journalism. and I wanted to be the next Barbara Walters.
Love it.
Clearly, I'm not. However, I felt strongly about the fact that sharing stories of the world and sharing what was going on in that vein of journalism was critical. You know, people needed to understand other people's stories, and I think that was really what made me want to do that. And through that period of time, I recognized that I didn't want to live by deadlines, that I didn't want to take something that I absolutely loved and turned it into a requirement, an expectation, a job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of strayed from that, and took me a long time to actually recognize that I could write a book. I did the whole, the whole thing. Like, I can't do that. Who am I to write a book? Nobody's going to read my book. I'm nobody. I don't know how to publish a book. I'm not doing this. There's no way I can't. I just can't. And that became my story that I lived out for so long.
Yeah.
Until 2013. And I remember I was sitting at my desk in my old house, and I literally stood up. I had that aha moment, and I was like, why not me?
Yeah.
And I couldn't answer it. And I kind of dove into that head first. And that was in October of 2013. And my book was published and in my hands by December. Because that was the decision. I made the decision, and I just did it. And it was one of the most important things I think I've done so far in my life, because I rewrote that story of I can't. I also made it very clear that you don't need to know what you're doing. If I held on to that book and didn't let it out into the world because there might be a typo, because of my perfectionism was holding me back for so long, it wouldn't be here today. And I'm happy to say that there's some typos in there.
Yeah.
Because I needed it to be finished, and I needed it to do what it has done. So for me, it kind of just, it was, even if nobody ever read it, for me, it was for me. I did that for me. And so I decided, all of this time I've been building, this business and working hard and doing all of these things. And I thought, it is way past time. And over these last few years, I think what I have learned to be true is that we will only do what we say we're going to do if we commit to that statement.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of like, yeah, I'm going to write another book. It'll happen. But I had to make that decision again. I had to say, no, I'm doing this. And, I did all the important stuff up front and made sure that, like, I'm committed. I'm in. This is happening. And, as soon as it's finished, it goes out into the world, and it becomes exactly what I said it was going to be. And it's taken a little bit longer than I had hoped. But I had a heck of a year. I mean, really the roller coaster of the year that we've talked about. Yeah. So I kind of decided in its own time, this is going to happen. It's happening. I'm continuing to move this ball down the field every time I sit down and, my hands hit the keys. So I feel like it's not far now, and it's not long now, and we'll get there soon. But I'm excited for that, because I think that what I've really based this book on is that brave concept, that brave framework that we've put together with some stuff around it of real life, of what's happening for us today, and what questions should we be asking? How can we ask more questions, and how can we challenge ourselves to show up for each other right now in that connection and community that will save us? And so the book is titled Meet Them Where They Are: How Connection and Community Will Save Us.
And it's incredible. I mean,
Thank you.
It just is. And so what we're going to do now is I'm going to shine the light on Jen and have her read a
Okay.
little bit for you who have joined us now or after. But I'm going to put the spotlight on and let you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is the first time that I'm going to do this, and I'm going to share. I'm actually going to read you chapter 1. So pull up a chair, put your feet up, refill your coffee. Picture it's sitting by a cozy fire and enjoying a story time for a second. So this is chapter 1. How did we get here? The sound of gravel under the tires of our 1974 wood-paneled green Ford Country Squire station wagon made my eyes pop open abruptly. I was so confused. I swear I had just fallen asleep. Still trying to open my eyes fully, I felt the sudden pain in the back of my upper right thigh and hip. I shifted quickly so the seatbelt connector that was rigidly sticking up from that hard front middle seat would stop poking me. The air was cold and almost like a wind tunnel as my parents had both the front doors wide open. They pulled the things out that were shoved under the seats to make space for all 7 of us and all of our stuff. One of which, I'm sure, was my coat. I was always hot in the car and still to this day can't drive with the coat on. I always remember the hundreds of times my mom would yell at my dad if he turned the heat up through the vents. She hated hot air blowing in her face, as do I. "We're here," my dad shouted through a yawn and a vocally loud stretch as my mom was fumbling with my coat, trying to get it on my dead weight 5-year-old body, not even out of the car yet. The others had all already made their way to the door, and I was still fighting the seatbelt and the coat, not sure of where we were and if we were just getting home or arriving at the place we may have been heading, or if I even remembered where that place was in the first place. The many hours spent falling asleep in that front hard middle seat with those double no-give seatbelt connectors is such a clear memory from childhood. Visiting relatives, vacations in the mountains, wherever we went, I would wake up to the sound of arriving. And that same thought, how did we get here, would begin to wake me up as I shifted in my seat, put my jacket back on, and with eyes half closed, climbed down out of the car and into whatever adventure we had embarked upon, even if it was just coming home. I have asked this question when in the middle of a sticky situation, or of the teams I coached who were down a couple runs late in the game, or of myself when I wasn't paying attention in the process. I have found it is extremely difficult to know the answer if we were asleep for most of the ride on the way to where we are. This journey we've all been on, this shared experience of the past few years, feels for some of us like we're in that uncomfortable front middle seat, not knowing where we're going before we woke up to the arriving. Here, in this place, we've never been. The cold, drafty air hitting our tired selves as we try unsuccessfully to put our coats on. That one sleeve we can never seem to find behind our backs as we make our way out of the car and into the here and now, wherever that may be. We've been living in a time of racial unrest, of heated political divide leading to anger and hatred. We've seen war-devastated countries in our midst, people struggling just to exist. We've watched as a global pandemic ravaged our whole world. Our heroes in healthcare, first responders, teachers, and all other frontline essential workers have been burned out and asked again every single day to find more to give from the bottom of an empty well. We've watched as war rages on in places we may have never been, and in those we may call home. It all feels so heavy. And I can't help but ask loudly, how did we get here? We've never done all of this before at once, and yet every day that we're still on this side of the ground, we continue to do it. We figure it out even when it's hard, and it's been hard. I don't know if we will ever know the answer to how did we get here. However, I do know that we can take some time collectively to figure out where we go from here. We didn't ask for these challenges to hit us all at once. We never do. We didn't have any idea what was about to happen when we rang in the new year on January 1st, 2020, and the truth is, we never do. What makes this different now is that we can intentionally make choices to take the right next step toward writing a better story and moving in a new direction from here. Beyond the hurt and grief and loss is a healing and compassion and grace for all of us. What story are we telling? What legacy are we leaving? Let's face it, what we were doing wasn't working. This idea that we could work ourselves to death, overcommit and underdeliver, and try not to lose ourselves in the process just wasn't realistic. It's never shown itself to be sustainable. We have found ways to make ourselves more stressed, more sick, more unhappy, and more unwell, just to have more. The gift we're given now is the daily reminder to shift our weight just a little bit off of the seatbelt buckle. It's in the moments we get to have at home with our families, intentional moments we may have been too hurried to have before. Quiet and laughter, movie nights, all-day PJ parties. For those who learned how to work from home in a dress shirt and a pair of ratty old sweatpants. To have a midday walk break with the dogs, no commute, no traffic, no heels or suits. For some, it looks so different today than just a few years ago. Moments we didn't ask for, perhaps we can find some goodness in. Either way, we get a choice now. Maybe not in how we got here, but in what's next. We get to choose how we respond in the midst of what is hard and how we show up in community and connection for each other going forward. I was 11 when my family bought our vacation home in the Pocono Mountains that we would call the Ark. We hosted annual family reunions with upwards of 60, 70 people. We played games into the wee hours of the night. We watched scary movies on VHS that we rented from the one video store within a 45-mile radius. We laughed and had some great and not so great times there. We cried and fought and watched for shooting stars and went to county fairs. The month before my 13th birthday, this time in the back seat next to my mom as my brother drove, we hurried down the windy mountain roads to the hospital that was a good 45 minutes away to meet the cardiologist. My dad was having chest pains as we were about to go to the basement for a family game of ping pong. He sat in the front seat to direct my brother, who had just gotten his learner's permit, and who I'm pretty certain was not supposed to be driving at night. As we turned a corner, he slammed on the brakes, making my dad brace himself on the dashboard. My mom threw her proverbial mom arm across my shoulders so I didn't go flying into the front seat. I strained my eyes in the pitch black to see past my brother's seat and into the middle spot I used to claim as my own, to see why he would stop like that. As my eyes focused in the dark, I saw a big head and a very large eye looking right back at us. It was a cow. In the middle of the road. As if my dad wasn't having a heart attack prior to this, he most certainly had to be now, I thought. We finally arrived safely to find out that my dad would be admitted and needed an angiogram. A few days later, we were informed he had a mild heart attack and would need angioplasty. We went home to New Jersey, and a few weeks later, on my mom's 50th birthday, he would have open heart surgery in New York City at Cornell Medical Center. He was 48 years old. As I write this, I'm having a moment of realization since my big milestone birthday this year. I'm currently the same age my mom was when Dad had his surgery. And so the question begs to be asked again, how did we get here? Moments and memories I won't ever have again. Some I couldn't even recall if I needed to. Whole chunks of time that I couldn't even tell you how they were spent. They just happened. And now they're gone. Those times I was on autopilot, not knowing where I was going, but waking up again to the sound of arriving. And maybe sometimes waking up to the sound of leaving. Jobs, relationships, mistakes, regret. Whatever the thing, we're either coming into a problem, coming out of a problem, or we're most likely in one now. Our humanness and all of it is predicated on how awake we are in the moment and how much we can tolerate in the waking. We are creatures of habit. We move our hand away from the flame for the most part, but only when it gets too hot. Too often, we don't actually make the connection to not put our hand in the flame to begin with. How did we get here? Would be exactly that. Figuring out what would make us stop wanting to touch the fire that we know will burn us or may not change the outcome. Asking how we got here is often useless in that regard, as it doesn't really fix the issue of what caused the issue in the first place. We're here. It doesn't matter if we took a plane or train or coat or car or boat, does it? Or does it? Will asking how we got here make us not get here again? Or since we already know the way, maybe it doesn't make it harder, but actually easier to find it again the next time. Do we ask anyway for the sake of asking? To try hard to do it differently now, to do it better? Regardless of the hard questions, the truth remains. We have arrived. We're awake, and we know now that we're here in the midst of the searching. What the next right step is will be up to us. And how we figure it out is probably what will change the course of all of that is yet to come. In taking a collective deep breath and waiting for each other to be ready to exhale, we can dig up a different kind of energy that most won't ever know in their lifetimes. We're the lucky ones. We get to be alive right now. We get to know that we have a choice to either be in the way or become the way. We can be the match or we can be the bucket of water. Knowing which is needed when is always the key. And maybe instead of the front hard middle seat or even the back seat where we have no control, we climb into the driver's seat and take the wheel. We make it known who we are and what we want from this one beautiful life we hold in our very own hands. We make a choice, a loud and decisive choice. And as we do, we unapologetically wake up to the sound of our very own arriving. This time knowing where we are and why we're here. And most of all, knowing where we want to go next. This knowing will undoubtedly lead us forward. And the only way forward is to recognize that it is truly our humanity at the core that matters. That it is connection and community that will undoubtedly save us. The road ahead is up to us. The truth is, it always has been. The pen is yours. Write what you want the next chapter to say. Shift to a comfortable spot. Get your coat on if you want. Together, we exhale. And it is only together that I'm ready to arrive at this next beautiful adventure. Buckle up. We ride at dawn.
Again, how much I love hearing it in your voice is incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. Oh my goodness. Good. Who's ready for the rest of that book?
There's more to come, my friends, more to come. Well, it's there, but yes, more to come when you read it.
Exactly. Again, I just thank you for sharing that with me. I got to hear it through your voice, and yeah, I think it's so incredible to like, it's so fun for me to hear people's voices in their writing, and yours comes out so incredibly authentic. And it's so much you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, thanks for listening. Truly, that means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Share it.
Yeah. Well, we will let everyone go for today. Hopefully you've been able to sit back, relax, and take a minute for yourself to listen, right? I don't know how often we get to be able to really do that. So
agreed.
Come back and replay it if that's something that means something to you. So for those of you who joined today, for those of you who are joining later, thank you so much for being here. And Jen.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Appreciate you.
We'll talk soon. We'll see you next week.
You got it.